is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Another episode of Booth Review. We are back to talk about the defense. What's up, everybody? Kent Swanson here with my guy, Brandon McAnderson, B-Mac. Great to have you here. As always, man, excited to be doing the show with you.
Yeah, man, so excited to be on here, ready to talk Kansas football and get down to some of the things I'm super interested in for the upcoming season.
Well, super interested is the right word, because like last week we talked about the offense, and with the offense, there's so many known commodities. It's just a matter of like how bigger, faster, stronger some of these guys get. One more year in the system. It's some of the boring storylines, even though we know, hey, that team's gonna light up the scoreboard. But the defense is the interesting side of the ball, because I think there's more unknowns about this side of the ball relative to what we've seen with the offensive side of the football. And B-Mac, I want to start with this. Before we get too far down the rabbit hole on the defensive side of the ball, and I think there's plenty of stuff to talk about for sure, I want to just make a blanket statement off the top. I know a lot of people had comments about Brian Borland's defense, and they're putting him under the microscope and saying, some stuff about him, like he should be gone and all this stuff. You're not going to find very many stronger Brian Borland defenders than me, because I don't have a problem with what I saw schematically on game days last year. I actually kind of appreciate the approach that he took. I think it's smart strategy, especially with the kind of offense that he has on the other side of the ball. I think there was a strong attempt to try to play some complementary football. I think his schematic approach, his defensive approach, I don't have a ton of issues with it. And I'm just more excited to see what he has another year in the system, more developed bodies, a deeper roster on the defensive side of the ball. I'm very excited to see what Brian Borland and staff can do with this version of the Kansas Jayhawks.
Absolutely. Sometimes I would watch from the sideline, and you have your version of how you experience the game, and then you have to go back and watch it. So part of it is like, I'm at the game, I'm having an experience. What's going on here? Why is this guy not? Go back and watch the film. You're like, that guy's in the right place. That guy's where he's supposed to be. That guy read it the right way. So now it was more, what you started to notice was just lack of execution. Mm-hmm. What you started to notice was favorable down and distance. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of defensive coordinators want to do. But if you're in 3rd and 2, you can't do it. If you're in 3rd and 4, you can't do it, because those are run pass downs. And I mean, even in stretching to the NFL now, that some of the schematics and some of the little gadget schemes, those 3rd and 4 and unders are not fun for defensive coordinators. So you see different strategies of how people want to handle it, whether it be aggression or base defense. What I like about what they're doing is teaching base defense, learning base defense, executing base defense, getting in favorable down and distance. Then I'll get cute. Then I can get cute and start to pull some of these packages out where I've got this guy doing this and that. That's not where they are right now. That is a luxury item that we just didn't get to see.
There's something to be said about earning the right to rush the passer. And it is a lot of the early down, nitty gritty, doing the work, taking care of business, being sound, being structurally sound, making the tackles so you get those opportunities to pin your ears back and have a little bit of fun on 3rd down. Get the crowd ramped up, because they know that that something fun's coming, because they're going to bring some kind of exotic pressure. They're able to get a little bit more unique with what they're trying to do on the defensive side of the ball. And but when I look at what Brian Borland last year, and it's funny you talk a little bit about the NFL too, because I think what you're seeing a lot of times, especially with how good the quarterbacks are getting and how good offenses are starting to get, is there's a lot more willingness to give up stuff, between the 20s. There's a lot more willingness to, force long, sustained drives, limit explosive plays, get a little bit more creative in the red zone, try to keep it at field goals. Those are considered wins now in modern football, where maybe that wasn't necessarily the case back in the day. And so I tend to think, and I spend a lot of time covering the NFL, but I look at college football and I say, you know what? I don't think it's a bad strategy to force college kids to be consistent up and down the field. And I think the premium on reducing explosive plays is a valuable thing, especially if you're able to make consistent tackling and be sound from underneath. So I like a top-down approach. especially when you're playing between the top 20s, because forcing college kids and college quarterbacks to be consistent, it can be a winning strategy a lot of weeks.
Yeah. And this, I've got a couple of historical references for you. You kind of think about it this way. Kansas closes the end of that season 1 with some big time fireworks from JD, and they end up winning a shootout and then being competitive in a couple other games. That was the offensive trajectory. The defensive trajectory is different. They've had productive games. You've seen where and why their strategy would work. Iowa State is a good example of us. They played a style of play, played a lot of base defense, cover 4, keep it underneath, and tackle.
Yep.
And it worked. They had other games where they were able to do that. They were able to play and pace the game and get stops and win on the defensive end. So you've seen that they're able to execute it. To me, the big issue is yards per carry on defense. It's the big indicator of allowing you to play a different style of defense. Mm-hmm. So as taking another historical reference back to my career, 2003, I was a redshirt. We had a bottom 5 defense in the country. Coach Bangino was putting John Randall at corner. That's how we discovered Charles Gordon was a corner. It was actually that whole process because we couldn't do anything. Wow. So Charles started playing both ways. John Randall started playing both ways. And obviously it was a position that Charles got to play on Sundays. But that was kind of the beginning of it. They took that basically the same team in 03, put them in 04, added a couple edge pieces like a Jamal Ashley, a couple back end pieces, a Rodney Harris at safety, but not a lot of change. And that defense went from bottom 5 to top 30. And the biggest indicator was yards per carry. It went from well over 5.5 yards per carry to just at 3.3. And that was something that they continued to decrease into those 05 seasons where our defense was really strong. So there are a lot of similarities between those teams and what they did and what this team can do, bringing back a lot of the same guys.
Well, and you talk about college quarterbacks enforcing consistency, and we have, on the NFL side, the run game becomes it's considered a lot more devalued than the college game, and to some degree, the college game has a lot more variability and can be a bigger asset in the college game than sometimes it's treated in the NFL, right? So you see some of these college teams with a lot of productivity on the ground. And it's it's so right. And I think it's a bigger point of emphasis when you look at the college side of football specifically is run games can tear teams up differently than it's able to at the National Football League. And, just seeing there can be insane amounts of production if you aren't gap sound in gap integrity and something, even just simple things like, the hash marks can create some more spacing, for some offense to operate within. So you're absolutely right. That early down run defense and just run defense in general, I think is a high priority. And it's some teams will spread you out and run. Some teams will, tighten it up. You've got to be able to guard things differently. You have to be more diverse schematically. And I mean, it's a big point of emphasis, no doubt about it. And honestly, I feel like we've heard Brian Borland talk about the emphasis on stopping the run. Well, it's because of the variability that you can see from from a consistency perspective from a college quarterback. And I don't hate the idea of forcing teams to be one thing. If you can be emphasize taking something away, I understand why you would just try to get stopping the run as the priority.
Yeah, and I like it as a teaching principle to begin with, because basically you're saying, okay, you can't play base defense, but now you want me to be exotic and you want me to bring people off and you want me to expose people in coverage? No thanks. So it's honestly, like you mentioned, a top-down approach. It's saying there's all these things that I can do. I can't right now because we haven't learned how to play the basic way of defense. So I think there's a lot of strength to it. And I think what happens when you get older players, if you looked at the depth chart for what we expect it to be, Tommy Dunn Jr. is the only non-junior. And I think he's a third-year sophomore. So you're talking about a much older team being asked to do something very basic. Occupy your gap. Don't be over-tempted to make plays, because you've seen it at the NFL level, because that's where you see it the most, is that a tiny mistake is massive. I show up where I'm supposed to be. I'm outside leverage. We always tell defenders your outside arm has to be free. I show up, my outside arm's free, but man, that tackle looks delicious. So you'll see these guys get to where they're supposed to be, and then they'll grab and they'll swim, And then if you swim, that's Bijan Robinson on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's Deuce Vaughn on the other side of that. So they're expecting you to gamble, and they're going to take advantage of that and turn a gap that's this big into a run that's this big.
Yep.
And that's really what the run game is. That's why it is so, you just have to be consistent in terms of hitting your gaps. If the ball's in my gap, I got to tackle. I got to tackle for loss. I got to sack. If it's not, I have to just do my job and depend on everybody else in the team.
You just got done talking about Tommy Dunn Jr. There's a bunch of players I want to talk about with you. But first, Home Field's Can't Miss Kickoff is here to make sure you are ready for the 2023 football season in style. Can't Miss Kickoff begins August 21st with exclusive long-awaited bomber jacket offerings celebrating some of college football's fiercest rivalries, in addition to an extremely special Jack Trice offering made in sponsorship with Iowa State to honor the legacy of one of college football's most important heroic figures. New customers can get 15% off their order on any of the Home Field apparel, not just the bomber jackets, any apparel when you use promo code NOSEATS23. That's the KU promo. You're going to get all kinds of really awesome KU gear. I got a sweatshirt on the way. I know B-Max got a sweatshirt on the way. I know you got a t-shirt, an Orange Bowl t-shirt on the way. We got all kinds of great stuff coming from Home Field Apparel. You'll be seeing us rocking it during the season here on Booth Review and on the KCSN channel. Obviously, the 8 No Seats guys are going to be rocking as well. That's why you use promo code NOSEATS23 off of your 15% off of your KU apparel. So make sure you check that out. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
B-Mac, I'm really excited to talk to you about specific players on this defense. Because I think, obviously there's some really talented guys on that team, and we saw some really fun some players that are returning. But there's newer names. There's newer names involved on the defensive side of the ball differently than what we're seeing on offense. If some people are excited about the quote unquote new toys, right? It's on the defensive side this year. And I want to start with the defensive line because that's one of the big, I think a lot of people saw it as a question mark because there was a lot of turnover on the defensive line. You lose Lonnie Phelps, to the NFL, but you lose guys like Sam Burt, Caleb Sampson, off the team. They move on. So let's talk a little bit about this front. There's some newer names, and there's also some older names that have probably stepped up in a big way. Tell me a little bit about who you're excited to see on the defensive line this year.
Well, the two interior guys, you talk about new toys. You got a guy like Devin Phillips, who he doesn't really seem like a new toy because he is at the end of his career. He's a grad transfer. Man, this guy, his explosiveness, the way he shifts his weight forward on contact. A lot of teams in the Big 12 are zone teams where they're trying to move that front. This is a guy that will be moving with you, but he will definitely be in control. What I like about the combination of him and Tommy Dunn Jr. is traditional size. So these guys aren't in-between guys. These guys are traditional inside linemen for the Big 12 that have the athletic profile to get separation off that guard and run down that line. We talked about, where a running back is looking. As I'm a running back and I want to go to a certain gap, I want that D lineman's head on the side opposite where I'm going. So if I'm going to stretch, I want that D lineman to take a look. But where those D linemen can get you in trouble, guys like James McClinton, guys like Tommy Dunn Jr., which I think he'll be able to do, is that they can get separation. They can peek their head here and rip away and still make plays. I saw Tommy Dunn Jr. do this to Michael Ford Jr. last year in camp, and this was from a nose position, outside zone to his side, locking up with that guard, creating separation, and then having the athletic ability to run that line. I think this is a big-time pro prospect and a guy that's just scraping the surface of what he might become, and that's just a deep group. You've seen with Brian Borland, they played 6 or 7 guys last year. So it reminds me a little bit of the wide receiver group from the previous season. So it was guys that we have seen, guys that we had liked, but guys that we had not seen in these roles. And there was no questions about the wide receivers after week 2. So I think we'll see something similar on the inside of that defensive line.
I really liked, we got a limited sample size of Tommy Dunn Jr. last year, and I do agree. There was definitely traits that intrigue you about what you just saw in a limited capacity. I think he wound up with like 7 tackles on the season or something like that. But he saw a little, he had kind of a smaller role last year. But yeah, the limited exposure that we got to him, yeah, there was reason for optimism. He looked a little bit different. He moved a little bit different than some of the guys that you saw taking the primary snaps. And I mean, look, there's a lot of experience that has walked out the door, but it kind of seems like they've replaced that for a lot more athleticism. And you look at Tommy Dunn Jr., the track record that a Gage Keys has coming from Minnesota. You talked a little bit about Devin Phillips, the limited snaps. That dude looks like a brick house. Yeah. Like just a different type of guy that they have manning the interior of that defense. Do you think, it kind of felt like a lot of times there was a lot of point of attack, just holding the point of attack up front a little bit on the front. Do you think we're going to play a little bit more? You're going to see him play a little bit more in the gaps. I know they tried to do that a little bit more first year. It was, hey, we're going to try to hold up in a little bit of two gap, but just kind of try to hold point of attack. Last year, a little bit more intentionality to try to get upfield, but maybe didn't necessarily have the same kind of athleticism. We think we're going to see KU getting up the field a little bit more with this front along the interior.
I do. There's two ways to go about protecting your linebacker. One is having a two gap guy. Yep. So if you're not trusting your linebackers, you think they need more assistance and they're having trouble getting off blocks, you want your defensive lineman to kind of lock on, hold on as long as they can, and allow your linebackers to run those gaps. But what you're going to see in this group, I believe, with guys like Gage Keys up to 285, clock you run 20 miles per hour. So this is a Minnesota transfer. Guy has big time upside. Caleb Taylor is a guy that's always felt like he was on the brink of something special. He hasn't quite got there. He's still here. You got guys like DJ Withers, who's got that great swim move, good up the field pass rush inside guy that serves a role and hopefully takes another big step himself. So to me, you just have talent, you have versatility, and now it's about, okay, can these guys make plays? Because that's what you see with the James McClinton. So if you're looking for defensive similarities, they run a lot of the same defenses we ran. We ran 4-3. We ran a lot of base cover 4. So it helps you see, okay, you can win playing this defense. Here's a an All-American nose tackle, defensive tackle, and James McClinton that just played the gaps, really worked with get off and crazy active hands. You can see a lot of those similarities, and I think you're going to see the defensive line more as playmakers in the run game, and you'll see that there's going to be more to think about for that offensive line in terms of getting off to linebackers. So I think it just kind of muddies up the look, gives them more complexity.
The edge group's a lot different than it was this time last year, too. The biggest returning name for me is Jeremy Robinson. Mm-hmm. I've maintained, I think Jeremy Robinson has the kind of profile to be a Sunday guy. He's got length, he's got density that you don't, that's not super common. And then but the ability to turn a corner, some flexibility through his frame. It's not normal for a guy of his size. Those are the kind of traits that are intriguing as a Sunday type kid. I think he could wind up being, a prospect and getting some looks here, as soon as this year. He showed some promise last year, some ability up the arc. You saw the play I think he made against Baylor. This is the guy I'm looking to is I think the guy that can take the biggest step at the defensive end group and really make a big impact, kind of down in and down out.
Yeah, he's got a timeliness to his game that I think is a little overlooked. I mean, if you think about not just the play that he made at Baylor, but the moment that he made the play was huge. Yeah. The game was very close to getting out of hand. And that was a game that swung the tide, the play that swung the tide in that game. You think about his big play at Houston where he dips inside, dips outside, gets the sack fumble and the recovery. That was right after an offensive score, and that kind of slammed the door on them. So he has leadership traits and qualities. I mean, you interview him, and he's just a super impressive guy. You see him, and he's got all the physical gifts. I think it's now just about opportunity and looking around that defense and seeing there is nobody as good as me. So it's time for me to kind of step up and be that guy. I'm like you. I'm ready to see number 90 be very special. Now, I've told you about Hayden Hatcher and some of his weight gain.
Yeah.
How much physically he's improved over the offseason with that 8-10 pounds of muscle. How different of a player do you think he can be in terms of making an impact?
Well, and I'd tell you what, since you talked to me about him, I've been kind of creeping on KU's athletic stuff to like any videos to try to see if I can find any clips of Hayden Hatcher's rework body. I think I saw Jeremy Robinson cut up, and there was Hayden Hatcher looking, real dense, and yeah, he definitely has, a different physical profile to him. For him, I think it's just playing consistency, just playing a consistent down in, down out football. And he kind of always seemed like a guy, like I definitely think he has some ability up the arc for sure. And like, I think he can kind of threaten that. I don't think he's quite as flexible as Jeremy Robinson, but high effort. And I think a pretty good first step, but also that weight is probably going to help him be more consistent against the run and earn more opportunities. Right. And so he's always just like, I think he's got a kind of pretty, like how he's built is kind of stockily, like a little bit more lower center of gravity. It almost feels like the way he's kind of built. I don't know if he has like the longest arms, but I do think he's really pretty sound at the point of attack for not being the longest guy. So like there's going to be some players that are going to give him troubles, with tackle length at times, but sound, sturdy, and earning opportunities. Like it's kind of the same. Hey, early down work could help you, get some opportunities to rush the passer as the down go or as the possession goes on. Anything else? I mean, I want to hear from you on this guy because I know this is one of the guys you're hyped about.
I just think he's a very good option. If you think about the way people play defensive line now, you're seeing guys that they're playing too deep at every position at least.
Oh, for sure.
And sometimes a third guy getting another 15 or 10% of the snaps, depending on how guys are doing up front. And he's just a great option. He's a great option because, he's going to play really hard. He's a great option because he probably can't play 3 downs because he's exhausted, from the first 2 downs. He can probably be a guy that could be a good situational pass rusher. Like you mentioned, maybe you do have a better option in the run. Maybe it's, one of the transfers from Minnesota or the Auburn transfer or the Miami. There's a lot of guys there, on the edge. So he's just a good, solid option to take snaps and to give effort and to keep pushing those guys, the talented guys they have in that group.
Well, this is something I'm kind of curious about. When I look at the roster construction of the defensive end group, I look at Dylan Brooks and Patrick Joyner, even Damian Westmoreland to some degree. I'm curious how they're going to use, who's going to be the base down? Who's going to be and so I look at Hayden Hatcher and from a density perspective and what you've seen in a limited capacity, I feel like, he's sound. He's just assignment sound. That was something that kind of stuck out to me last year. I mean, is he going to be the base down guy, or do you think they have somebody that's going to be able to hold up on the base downs, or is it just going to be Hayden Hatcher?
See, I think it'll work itself out that way, but the way that Hayden Hatcher works and the way that they reward hard work, I could see him still being the starter. And then, probably in the meat of the game, they probably will make a sub when they're running the ball. But, when that game's on the line, he's going to be in because you're going to want a speed guy for those pass rush situations. And that's kind of the beauty of the position is that it's a position to be won. And, that means that if I go out and perform and I get production, maybe my chances go from getting 25% of the snaps to 50 to 60. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be a situation that changes week to week. And maybe Hayden Hatcher shuts us all up and says, no, I'm here now. So I'm about to be that guy. So that's what you're always hoping about. When you have that competition, that open space, you're hoping that Hayden Hatcher says, nope, my job. But if there isn't, they got options. Like you mentioned, Joyner, Brooks, Booker, they got options. It's a matter of who's going to be the productive guy, who's going to stand up. Because once again, that receiver parallel, Lawrence Arnold was a guy where you were like, I like Lawrence, but Lawrence left no doubt. LJ left with doubt that he was the go-to guy that you needed on a third down. That's what you want to see from that DN group.
Yeah, I'm a little fascinated from that perspective. I really like what they have along the interior from a strength and density perspective. I'm just schematically and personnel wise, I'm just kind of curious, if they try to run at whoever's lining up opposite Jeremy Robinson, Gage Keys, Devin Phillips. Whoever's lined up opposite. I just wonder if they're going to try to run at that guy a little bit and what the answers for KU are if that does happen, because it does feel just profile wise, Hatcher's probably the best fit, but if it's not him, I know some people are really excited about Austin Booker too.
Yeah.
So what have you seen, or what do you think about Austin Booker and your limited exposure to him?
So when I was checking in with the staff in the spring, he was a guy that, was just getting his beak wet, just arrived on campus, just getting to know the process and the hard work and the system. And it's been basically a night and day review in terms of how he's doing in the fall. Now he's a little bit more comfortable. You want to talk about physical traits. I mean, there's not one that he doesn't possess.
Yeah.
So he's an impressive looking guy. He's got all the skills you'd want to see. He just needs confidence. He needs production to kind of substantiate some of those skills.
I think he'll get some opportunities for sure, because just looking at that athletic profile that he had walking in there, that's You're right. Like just getting to see some of the clips that you've been able to see from him, on social media and whatnot. Man, there's some intriguing stuff there. BMAC, I just love that you use the term "getting your beak wet." You're a true Jayhawk. I know what you're doing. I want to talk to you about the back seven right after this break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Thanks to everybody that's hanging out with us. Feel free to leave a 5-star review on the channel if you're listening. You're going to have KU football coverage all year round, or all season, by the way, all season. And you're going to have some all year round too, for sure, because we're going to have some coverage as well. Booth review. We kind of take you through the season, but you're going to have stuff on KC Sports Network all season long. I want to talk about the linebackers, and I just want to sing some praises real quick for, I think, one of the most fun schematic pieces that I think Brian Borland has at his disposal. I love Craig Young. I love what Craig Young does for this defense. I love, the skill set he possesses. I love how they've utilized him in year one. I think, in KU or in Kansas, I loved what they did with Craig Young, and I don't think people appreciate the diversity of skill set that it allows Brian Borland to have, because he does have a background as a linebacker. So he has some of the physical traits that you like as a linebacker. He also has some safety background. And so having a little bit of that hybrid ability, comfortability covering in space, comfortability in coverage, being able to drop, with ease, that can be a really great asset to have for a defense trying to play a little big, trying to play a little small.
Absolutely. And shout out to Brian Borland, a Baker Wildcat, for a time as a coach. I know that's not your favorite team, but that's my wife's alma mater.
Come on, man.
Excuse me, brother. That's the wife's alma mater. I'm just giving Baker some love.
All right.
You stoking any rivalry.
It's okay. Hey, they didn't beat us while I was there. We're good.
There you go. That's what you hold on to. That's easy. That's what you hold on. I'm 3-2 against Mizzou, 3-2 against K-State. Don't you forget.
There you go.
So what I like about Craig Young, and I'll speak to this, is that he is the answer that you're looking for as a defensive coordinator. Because people play with pace, because they spread the field, you want a guy that can do both. You want a guy that's big enough to tackle and play in the box, and athletic enough to guard slots, and tall enough to guard tight ends. There aren't that many of those people. I mean, there's just not a lot of those people. What makes Craig interesting is that all the versatility he brings you in coverage, he also brings you that versatility and physicality in the run game and in the pass rush game. I just look at him as every possibility exists for him this season. Like if he were to be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12, that would not surprise me, just because of what he's capable of from a skill set perspective. Like how many people can literally rotate to safety from a base position? Yeah. I've seen him rotate to deep safety and just run cover 3. Yeah. And there just aren't that many people that can do that. And the people that can are not 6'4" and 225. So that's the combination of skill sets. And it's a conundrum that I don't really have an answer for. I thought last year they primarily chose to use his versatility in coverage, but I thought there were games where his physicality would have made a bigger difference. But how difficult is that for a defensive coordinator to have your jack of all trades be so good at two different things? You got to figure out which one supports the team best for this given matchup.
It makes a lot of decisions on the offensive side of the ball tricky too. And I think that's one thing I just appreciate about him is, what you can ask him to do. You can ask him to play in the box if you want. I like him. I like playing him as an overhang a lot better. But if you want to do that, you can lead different personnel groupings on the field for different situations and different personnel groupings that they're going to bring on. And Craig Young makes you respect a lot of different things, big, small, however you want to play it. Now, it wasn't, he's good at a lot of different things. I know some people had, I've seen some people frustrated with him, but I don't think people appreciate how much he does and how difficult it is to do everything that is asked of him. Yeah. And that's what I appreciate so much about Craig Young and what he brings to a defense. And, you talk about being structurally sound, having a guy that can be on so many different groups, in different personnel groups and be treated in so many different ways and still be structurally sound. That's such a valuable asset. I want to talk about the rest of the linebacker group though. Miller, Tywan Berryhill, they seem kind of like in the running, as the top two guys outside of Craig Young. But JB Brown seems to be getting a lot of love too, and it seems like he's pushing Tywan and Rich Miller in a big way.
Absolutely. You figure Rich is just a reliable, good player. I've had a lot of fun covering Rich. I've had a lot of fun watching Rich. But I think Rich would tell you he wore down at the end of last season, so I'm interested to see him kind of regain that strength, kind of has a better understanding of what it's going to take to get to the finish line. So I just want to see him kind of do those things. And then when you talk about Tywan keeps winning the job, and he deserves credit for that. He keeps getting better. He started playing probably before he should have been playing, but it is what it is. He's got to take advantage of his opportunities. I know J.B. Brown is your traditional veteran tackling machine linebacker, so you know exactly what you're getting from him. So I'm really excited about him as a fourth guy. And a name I'm starting to hear is Cornell Wheeler, which is a name I was excited about when he came here, a recruit from Michigan, starting to kind of crack that backup role to Rich. And if Rich is going to be rested and strong at the end of the year, he's going to need somebody that can step in and play some snaps that could be productive so he can rest and play the money down.
Yeah, Cornell Wheeler did the right thing getting away from Michigan. I'm just,
guys, as soon as you can.
Yeah, get as far away from there as you. Yeah, I just, I think it's good to have depth at that linebacker position, and we've talked about it. Trust is a big thing, and if you can build a group of players and depth at positions, to that you have trust in, that can go a long way in helping the longevity of a guy like Rich Miller. So I think, more linebacker depth is probably, it's welcome, especially since they lost a little bit of their depth last year. But, Cornell Wheeler, it's good to see his name starting to pop up. There's been good reports on JB Brown, but I'll emphasize this again. I love what you said about Tywan Berryhill winning the job again, because he was one of those guys that people were a little bit like, well, why can't the transfers beat him out? Well, because guys keep getting better. Yeah. And these guys keep improving, and the bar continues to get raised with depth and competition and the standards set by this program. So it's good to see that there's linebacker depth. Another name I want to ask you about is Jason Gilliam. I know there was some optimism for him last year, dealt with some injuries. Any buzz about him?
Yeah, he's kind of come back to being the same guy, just bigger and stronger. I think he's the guy that will give Craig some more positional versatility. If you watched in their defense last year, he probably only played Sam. So if Gilliam can be the fourth best player and he plays Sam, then you get to move 15 around a little bit. Maybe do play him in the box. Maybe get creative with your blitzes with him. I think Gilliam's another guy that gives you depth, gives you smarts, and really gives you a similar skill set, a 6'2", 220 skill set, but kind of doing the same things. I know when he came here as a true freshman, they were just floored by his ability as a safety to read the game and react. He had multiple pick sixes in early scrimmages. This is a guy that they think is really, really going to be big time. And I agree, and now he's got the time to rest and fill a role and not be a necessity. I think he's going to be a guy we hear from as the season progresses.
Yeah, that depth's fun. It's fun to have those kind of players. And I mean, I think, they might lose Rich Miller and Craig Young, but I think everybody else has at least 1 year eligibility left after this too. So that's a fun group to check out. Let's talk about the defensive backs. Cornerback gets a lot. Like Kobe Bryant gets a lot of love. I think Melo Dotson has to me personally, I think Melo Dotson has a potentially bigger NFL type ceiling than Kobe Bryant. I'm really impressed with what both of those guys have continued to put on tape, and they've been both put in really tough situations because they've been needed early in their careers. But I'm really intrigued by both of these guys. I like, Kobe Bryant's the guy that's made a ton of plays. He's made a lot of plays in the football. I'm super interested in Melo Dotson too, because from a physical profile, length, more density than Kobe Bryant has, there's some things about him that are giving me a lot of optimism about his growth and development as a player, that I think he could be a Sunday player when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. Melo Dotson last year, was a guy that the expectations, I would say, were lukewarm. They were able to bring in Kalen Gervin from Michigan State. This is a former top 50 recruit.
Yep.
And the conventional wisdom was, he's going to start a corner and Melo will be out of the rotation. Not what happened. Melo came out and had a really strong season. I thought, the Duke game, he'll tell you, he didn't finish well because he gave up that touchdown at the end. Mm-hmm. He was fantastic in that football game. They were obviously staying away from Kobe, and he competed all day long. He went up and he made plays. He tackled. What I like about him and Kobe is how much pride they take in their tackling. They were a group that they knew they had to look in the mirror. Their first year, they were very bad at tackling, and they had to really do something about it. And they did. They improved a lot at tackling, and it was something that carried on late into the season. I think both bodies wore down towards the end with tackling, but I do think that there was a conscious effort to improve in that area.
Well, and I just remember 2 years ago when Leipold and company first got in here, a lot of teams loved trying to challenge KU on the edges. They'd throw a lot of quick passes, a lot of, screen game out there. And it's just trying to challenge, younger, undersized, smaller corners to try to make plays and try to tackle and try to work through physicality. And I don't think you saw teams challenge quite as much this year or last season as you saw 2 years ago. And I think that definitely speaks to the intentionality that they had on the edges. They were much better on the edges. They were more physically prepared. Melo Dotson, he's so intriguing to me. I mean, he's got the 6'1", 190 is what he's listed out on the KU roster. And who knows, the way Gildersleeve and that group has been working, he might be 200 by now. Like, who knows? But
Right.
I mean, he looks the part. And Kobe Bryant, I think it's always going to be tricky, I think, for him to maintain a ton of weight, just how it seems like the last couple of years, his ability to hold on weight. But yeah, to your point, still gives outstanding effort in the tackling. But man, that dude makes so many plays on the ball, and he's got timely playmaking on the football. And that's why you see him getting so much love, and deservedly so, is because that's a guy that he has a knack for it. He has great instincts, and he reacts so quickly to them. I'm really excited to see what steps he's taken this year.
Yeah, he's so slippery too. The game that he really caught my attention early was that Texas game against Xavier Worthy. I mean, he was all over this guy. And you're talking about a guy that's probably going to be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
And he disrupted him. He made him uncomfortable. I mean, he couldn't get separation. Kobe made plays on the ball all night. He had the pick six later on in the game. So he's a gambler, but he also has great technique. And I've seen him kind of, he's different than Akeem. They're not similar in personality. They're not similar even in style of play. He is your traditional overconfident gambler, and he's got the length that matches that skill set, because a lot of guys want to make the plays that Kobe makes. They don't have that kind of length. They don't have that kind of ability to react and get out of breaks the way that he does. I just love those two, and I love Kalen Gervin on the inside.
Yeah, no, Kalen Gervin, he's steady, he's sound, and he's just a great asset to have because he has the inside-outside flexibility. I think he's a good tackler too. And he's grown man. He's got grown man strength. Demarius McGee is a guy I'm fascinated by. LSU transfer. That was a big get for KU just from a talent perspective. What do you think his role is? He going to get an opportunity this year to be part of this 2 deep?
I do, and what's interesting is he's another name that I'm starting to hear more of. In the fall, in the spring when I asked, he was like, he's here figuring it out. And as you would expect, some more time in the offseason, some more time with the playbook and style of play. Now you're hearing, okay, this guy can go. So I think he's going to be a guy that's regularly rotating, especially with, like we mentioned before, if you're going to play pace teams, you got to sub, and you got to sub before you have to. So your players are fresh when you need them, and having two guys that can really play the position, having a guy like Gervin that can bounce inside and out, be a strong tackler, and kind of make your nickel feel like a base defense. I think it's a fun group, and I'm excited to see them kind of achieve high.
I mean, and four is fine depth, but you probably want more.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a fifth guy emerging, a sixth guy emerging in the cornerback room? Because I do think that this team probably needs, to all the points you made, and just for sustainability for an entire season, you probably need more than 4 capable corners to throw out there on the field. Do you think they have more than that at this point?
I do. Quentin Lassiter, who is just as solid as Free State Firebird. This guy gets his hands on people. He's consistent. And if you want to know what they think about him, opening game of Tennessee Tech, opening game the previous season, we're in that tight game with South Dakota. And we ended up getting out there and just playing man on their 4th down attempt. And guess who was out there guarding the slot? Quentin Lassiter. And that was a few years ago. So that was them basically saying he's one of our best man players on this team, and they threw him out there. They haven't been bashful about putting him out there. I don't think they will be this year either. He's just so dang competitive.
That's interesting. No, that's good to know, because I mean, that's, I think, a position that can get tested very quickly if you don't have the capable depth. And like I do feel like they might have worn down a little bit at the cornerback position, especially being so young. And like it's great that all these guys are back and there's another year under their belts and a little bit more age, size, experience, because that's pretty valuable. Let's talk about the safety position real quick before we get out of here. Kenny Logan, OJ Burroughs. I'll tell you what, I thought Marvin Grant got better and more comfortable as the season went on last year. I'm sneakily very excited to see what he brings to the table. Like I think, Kenny Logan's a known commodity. I think OJ Burroughs actually played really well last year. The guy I'm most excited to watch personally is Marvin Grant.
I love Marvin. I love what he brings to the game. I like a real physicality, a real like tone setter. If you run the ball and he has a chance to finish you, you're going to feel him. He had a big 4th down stop last year where he took on a fullback. You just don't see that from safety. So he's got the versatility, he's got the speed, and he gives them, several different types of combinations they can use. But I honestly think, in the same way I mentioned with Jeremy Robinson, as excited as you are about Grant, for me, it's OJ. OJ, you're sitting on the sideline, and OJ has made some plays that you're like, okay, what was that? I mean, I could think of a couple just right offhand. Last year, TCU ran a jet sweep with Quentin Johnston. And, this is a first-round pick. This is a big physical guy. We were actually having trouble tackling him in that game.
Mm-hmm.
OJ Burrow runs up to the line of scrimmage, separates from a 6'7" tight end, makes an open field tackle on him. Early on in the game against K-State, they ran an arrow route with Deuce Vaughn on a 3rd and 7, and it was one-on-one Deuce Vaughn and OJ tackle. You know how many people you see tackle Deuce Vaughn one-on-one? I mean, maybe 1-2 times a season, 2 times a game. OJ Burrow did that. The Baylor game, he saved that game 2 or 3 different times. He had an interception on the goal line. He had a play. They had an RPO. They tried to throw a seam to a 6'5" tight end. He got separation on that. I think the bigger problem is you have Kenny as the reliable playmaking leadership player, and they kind of use him for the biggest moment. And I start to wonder if OJ is going to continue to grow as a player the way that he has grown as a player. How tough is that for a coach to reach a point where you're really wondering, we've got 3 guys that are so good, I don't know which combination to play right now.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's hey, we talked about it last week. That's good problems.
Yes.
Depth, chess pieces. I think there's a lot of players that we've talked about that have earned opportunities to see the field, and that's a good problem.
Yeah.
Having depth is going to be necessary, for how difficult, a college football season is. One more safety before we get out of here. Jalen Dye, Jermaine Dye's kid. It seems like he's been getting some love of recently. Do you think he's going to get in the mix at all?
Yeah, he is squarely in. I think he's a guy that they're really excited about. I think he's a guy that started to impress at the end of last year. I started to hear his name a little bit more towards the end of the season. That's a group that does have 4 deep now. I think they're very confident in his ability to kind of rotate and roam, and that goes to your point about versatility. Kenny can play both spots. So if you like Dye in one spot over the other, you put Kenny at the opposite spot. What OJ can do. He can cover. I bet OJ can come down and play nickel if he had to. Mm-hmm. So you just have a lot of versatility with those 4 guys. And I've been really excited about his athletic profile and just his competitiveness.
B-Mac, this time next week, we're going to be previewing a real football game.
Woo!
Let's go.
Let's go, man.
I can't wait, man. I'm so excited, but it's been fun. First couple episodes previewing both sides of the football for KU. Can't wait to be previewing Missouri State. That's it for Booth Review this week. I can't wait. That's B-Mac. I'm Ken Swanson. We'll catch you later.
Peace.